I remember the moment he looked me straight in the eye and said my career was nothing. The words hit me like a frozen gust of wind on a February morning, sharp and unforgiving. At that instant, I felt a surge of disbelief, followed by a cold rush of determination. His confidence in my supposed insignificance stung me more than any insult I had ever endured. I sat there, poised between anger and resignation, searching my mind for a response that could match the weight of his contempt and redefine the narrative he had cast. I left the coffee shop shortly after, the rain outside mirroring my mood. Instead of heading back to my tiny apartment downtown, I found myself walking toward the local community center where I had once volunteered during college. The place held memories of hope and purpose, a contrast to the hollow feeling that plagued me. Now, on a whim, I approached the administrative desk and asked about making a donation. The woman behind the counter smiled warmly and explained how contributions supported workshops for underprivileged youth. I sat on a worn bench and deliberated, my mind drifting back to his cutting remark. In that moment, I realized I could transform his derision into something meaningful. I pulled out my wallet and scribbled his name on the donation slip as the donor. It felt absurd and satisfying at the same time. The act was almost defiant, a statement that my actions would speak louder than his words. After signing, I handed the slip back and watched as it disappeared into a folder labeled charitable contributions. Walking out, I felt a strange lightness, as though I had shed an invisible burden. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to press on with renewed purpose. My phone buzzed soon after, a message from my sister asking about plans for dinner. I paused, fingers hovering over the screen, as I replayed the exchange in my head. Should I share what happened? Would she understand the motivation behind my impulsive donation? Instead, I typed back a simple yes and walked toward a nearby diner. The red neon sign flickered overhead, casting a warm glow on the wet pavement. Inside, the familiar hum of conversation enveloped me. I slid into a booth by the window, my thoughts returning to the community center and the lives my gift might touch. As I waited for my coffee, I scanned the diner's bulletin board. Flyers advertising local tutoring programs, charity runs, and food drives caught my eye. Each event carried a mission to uplift people who struggled to find resources and opportunities. I thought about the harsh comment that had shaken my confidence earlier and how unpredictable acts of kindness could be more powerful than scathing critiques. The barista set a steaming cup before me with a sympathetic nod. I cradled the mug between my hands, savoring the heat and the aroma. I felt a whisper of pride, knowing my contribution would ripple outward. Leaving the diner, I decided to visit the community center one more time. The rain had stopped, and puddles shimmered under the streetlights as I walked. Inside, the scent of fresh paint and building supplies reminded me of the renovation project their volunteers had completed last spring. I approached a bulletin case showcasing photographs of children painting murals, learning computer skills, and practicing instruments. Each image conveyed hope, resilience, and the potential for transformation. I pressed my palm against the glass, feeling a connection to every smiling face. That night, I resolved to become more involved, to see firsthand the impact of my donation. I reached out to the center's director the next morning, explaining my desire to volunteer. She responded quickly, inviting me to attend a planning session for the upcoming art fundraiser. When I arrived, a small group of staff and volunteers greeted me with enthusiastic handshakes. They shared their vision for an event that would raise both funds and awareness for youth programs. As we brainstormed themes and logistics, I felt a renewed sense of belonging. It was as though the insult that had once left me reeling now guided me toward a purpose I had never considered. In that room, my doubts began to dissolve. Over the next few days, I balanced my regular job with volunteer meetings and site visits. Each time I stepped into the center, I was reminded of my initial reaction to his words. If my career was nothing in his eyes, then my actions here could speak volumes. I found myself sketching marketing ideas on scraps of paper and negotiating with local businesses for raffle prizes. I arranged for musicians to perform and coordinated with local media outlets to spread the word. With every email and phone call, I felt more engaged and alive than I had in months. The initial sting of his remark faded under the glow of genuine accomplishment. As the fundraiser date approached, heartbeat quickened with anticipation. I thought back to that harsh moment when he dismissed my ambitions. Now I was at the helm of an event that promised to change lives and bring communities together. In the renovated gym, I watched families arrive and volunteers prepare tables with pride. In that instant, I understood that my career was defined not by judgments but by the difference I chose to make in the world. The morning of the art fundraiser arrived with an autumn breeze that rustled colorful leaves across the center's entrance. Volunteers bustled around tables draped in vibrant cloths while musicians tuned instruments beneath a makeshift stage. I stood at the main doorway greeting families as they arrived, offering event programs in printed folders I had designed the night before. Their excited faces mirrored my own anticipation. Every handshake reinforced my conviction that this event transcended criticism and negativity. It represented community resilience, creativity, and hope. The energy in the room pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside the renovated gym, children darted between activity stations, painting canvases and sculpting clay figures under the watchful eyes of mentors. I guided a shy boy toward a table covered in pastel pigments, gently encouraging him to dip his brush into a swirl of yellow. He hesitated, then painted a tiny sun on the corner of his canvas, beaming at his own work. Nearby, a teenage girl strummed chords on a borrowed guitar, her voice wavering at first but growing stronger as the audience cheered her on. These moments reminded me that even small expressions of art held the power to uplift spirits. By midday, a line snaked out the door for the homemade soup and bread sold by the center's culinary team. I joined the queue, my stomach rumbling as the scent of simmering vegetables and garlic filled the air. While waiting, I overheard two parents chatting about scholarship opportunities and after-school programs. Their gratitude for the center's existence warmed me more than the steaming bowl they handed me. I thought of the men who had dismissed my career as nothing and how differently my morning had unfolded. His words felt increasingly distant, replaced by something far more substantial. After lunch, I moved to the raffle table, where colorful tickets lay stacked beside donated prizes. A local bookstore had contributed signed novels, and a nearby cafe offered gift cards. I greeted each winner with a hearty congratulations as they collected their prizes, and I felt a thrill with every ribbon tied around a new book or coffee voucher. The center's director approached with a clipboard, her eyes sparkling as she announced that we had already raised more than half our goal. Relief and pride washed over me, confirming that our collective efforts were paying off. As the afternoon sun slanted through high windows, a speaker from a youth advocacy group took the stage. She talked about turning adversity into action, drawing applause when she shared her own story of overcoming doubt. I glanced at my phone and noticed a text from him. "I saw your fundraiser announcement. Bold move. Are you actually making a difference?" I paused before replying, fingers hovering over the screen. Instead of defending myself, I simply wrote, "Come see." Moments later, he appeared at the edge of the crowd, collar of his jacket turned up against the breeze. He watched in silence as children displayed their artwork and families sampled baked goods. I approached him with a gentle smile and introduced him to the director, who spoke passionately about the programs he had funded in his name. I felt my pulse quicken as I waited for his reaction. He nodded slowly, glancing around the bustling gym. Finally, he said, "I didn't realize it could feel like this." His voice lacked its usual edge. Uncertainty had softened his tone. For a brief instant, I recognized curiosity in his eyes. We walked together toward a mural painted by a group of teenagers depicting a phoenix rising from ashes. Bright oranges and reds contrasted against deep blues, illustrating transformation and rebirth. I explained how each brushstroke represented a story of perseverance, and he dipped his finger into a leftover patch of paint, hesitating before adding a small feather to the design. I watched as his expression shifted, pride replacing skepticism. When he stepped back, the feather blended seamlessly into the mural's narrative. In that shared act, I felt a real connection between us. Later, as the event wound down, volunteers began packing up chairs and folding tables. I joined a friend loading crates of leftover supplies into her car. The warm glow of satisfaction settled over me, stronger than any words of praise. I thought of my own journey, dismissed by someone I had once respected, then transformed by the choice to channel pain into purpose. That decision had set in motion a series of moments more meaningful than any accolade or paycheck. I realized publicity remained irrelevant compared to the genuine impact I witnessed today. Before leaving, the director handed me the final tally sheet. We had surpassed our fundraising goal by 20%. Tears pricked my eyes as I read the number. It quantified lives that would benefit from new art classes, mentorship programs, and scholarships. He slipped an arm around my shoulders and whispered, "I was wrong. You've built something remarkable." I rested my head against him, savoring the validation I had earned through action rather than argument. In that moment, I knew my career and my choices stood for far more than anyone could dismiss. The morning after the fundraiser, sunlight filtered through my curtains and landed on the framed photograph from the event. I sat up in bed and ran my fingertips over the image of the mural, its phoenix wings spread wide and vibrant. I recalled how his hesitant brushstroke had completed the painting, a gesture that spoke louder than any apology could. My heart swelled with pride and gratitude. I rose quietly to avoid waking him and made coffee in the little kitchenette. Steam curled above the mug as I poured cream, the rich aroma a reminder of every conversation and every plan I had made in pursuit of something more than mere survival. Sitting at the small table, I spread out my notes for the next project. Series of neighborhood art workshops for senior citizens. The idea had come to me during the fundraiser when I noticed an older woman lingering by the painting tables, her eyes wistful. She told me she used to paint with her late husband and had forgotten how to mix colors. I had encouraged her to try again, and she had produced the most delicate silk flower design I had ever seen. I scribbled outlines for advertising flyers and drafted emails to local senior centers. The possibilities felt limitless, and I realized that this was the true measure of my career. The capacity to create spaces for reinvention and healing. By mid-morning, I was at the community center again, this time setting up a small photography exhibit donated by a local artist. Black and white portraits documented everyday life in the neighborhood. Shopkeepers arranging produce, children playing in alleys, families gathered around dinner tables. Each frame celebrated simple beauty and resilience. I hung the photographs with care, aligning each one so the sequence told a coherent story. As I stepped back to admire the row, I felt a presence at my elbow. He stood there, gazing at a portrait of two elderly men sharing a laugh over a chessboard. His expression was softer now, respectful. He asked if I believed art could truly change lives. I smiled and nodded, my conviction deeper than ever. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. I balanced my day job with planning sessions, grant applications, and community outreach. I convened a small advisory board made up of volunteers, local business owners, and program alumni. We met every Thursday evening in a cramped conference room lined with paint-splattered tables. There, we hashed out budgets, strategized marketing, and shared stories of personal transformation. At one meeting, a young woman described how painting classes had given her the confidence to apply to art school. At another, a father credited our tutoring program with helping his son catch up in math. Each testimony fueled my determination, reminding me that my contribution extended far beyond any single event. One chilly evening, as I left the center, he caught up with me on the sidewalk. The streetlights cast long shadows as we walked side by side, crunching leaves underfoot. He admitted he had been wrong to dismiss my career and that witnessing the impact firsthand had changed his perspective. I listened as he spoke, his tone, honest and unguarded, and for the first time I allowed myself to fully release any lingering resentment. We reached my apartment building and paused at the entrance. He took my hand and said he wanted to support the upcoming senior workshops. I agreed, Grateful for the shared mission rather than any hollow gesture of reconciliation, the senior workshops launched on a crisp November morning. I greeted the participants in the art studio, where easels stood ready and palettes were filled with jewel-toned paints. The seniors arrived with cautious smiles, some using canes, others leaning on friends. I introduced a program and shared the story of the woman who had rediscovered her love for painting. Their eyes lit up with recognition. Many remembered similar moments of creative joy in their youth. We began with simple color mixing exercises and progressed to sketching familiar objects. Laughter echoed as brushes clattered and paint splattered on aprons. By lunchtime, vibrant canvases covered every easel, each one a testament to rekindled passion. Meanwhile, he volunteered to arrange refreshments and coordinate a small gallery opening for the participants' work. He pressed me to let him handle the details, and I found myself trusting him more than I ever had. Together, we sorted frames, hung pictures, and invited neighbors to view the exhibit. The night of the opening, the studio glowed with warm light. Family members, friends, and curious passers-by admired the paintings, offering compliments and words of encouragement. I watched the seniors beam as they discussed their techniques and reminisced about past hobbies. I realized that the ripple effect of my decision to donate in his name had blossomed into something far greater than I could have imagined. As the event wound down, I counted the proceeds from a small silent auction. The funds would cover future workshops and purchase additional art supplies. When I announced the total, applause filled the room. The seniors gathered around me, eyes shining with gratitude. I felt a swell of emotion, tears threatening to spill. He slipped an arm around my shoulders and whispered, "You built this with your own hands and heart." In that moment, I understood that the true value of my career had never been about titles or status. It was about forging connections, igniting creativity, and transforming doubt into opportunity. Later that night, as we packed away leftover refreshments, I reflected on how far I had come. His initial dismissal had sparked a journey that revealed my purpose and passion. I realized that every act of generosity, no matter how small, carried the power to reshape lives. My alarm clock rang early the next morning, but I fell asleep content, knowing that tomorrow I would return to the studio and continue building on this foundation of art, community, and hope. My career was no longer defined by a single person's opinion, but by the lives I touched and the inspiration I helped kindle.